Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to a soggy Silverstone for the Silverstone 500 weekend, the second event of the season in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It's qualifying day here at the home of British Motorsport, as our 4 qualifying sessions that will set the grid for tomorrow's race are about to get underway in what are, let's call them, challenging conditions. We've had some pretty heavy rain coming through over the last hour or so. It's been drizzling on and off all day, but the rain really intensifying over the last hour. The track is very, very wet, and that is going to create a real challenge for the drivers, but should produce even more exciting qualifying sessions than usual, because if it doesn't rain again, or at least rain any harder, the track conditions should improve with every minute, and we'll get, hopefully, one of those sessions where it's the last few moments that provide all of the excitement. The breeze picking up as well, that hopefully will help to blow this latest rain shower through a little bit more quickly. The drivers certainly will be hoping for that. Andy McEwen back with you this weekend from the commentary box, joined by Joe Osborne. And Joe, we had a little bit of inclement weather, it must be said, at Alton Park last time out. Certainly didn't dampen the spirits of the drivers. We had some fantastic racing to kick off our championship. More of the same here this weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely, and it is properly wet. We saw wetness at Alton Park, and even in FP2 earlier, it was damp. But this is next level, and it really is borderline whether it's too wet to even start qualifying. We're seeing the fast lane open so the cars can leave, and we're going to go green in around 30 seconds. But I think this is going to be super challenging, and what I love about it is the first drivers out are the amateurs.
Yes.
So it isn't even the pros that get to go and see the conditions and give some feedback. We're going straight in with the AMs, and they've got to get out there and get straight on it. Qualifying only 10 minutes long, so there's not that much time, potentially only 4 flying laps to get that lap in. These tyres have come out the oven, but these guys sat here. We can see Howard in front are on board with James Cottingham in the 2-season Mercedes, are losing tyre temperature. It's going to be really difficult to get that back today.
It is indeed. 43 cars we're hoping to see take part in the next 4 qualifying sessions. If you're new to British GT and you don't know how this works, we have 2 drivers sharing every car across 2 classes, GT3 and GT4. So the AM drivers out first in the GT3 cars. That's the session that's getting underway now. They will set a lap time. Then their pro drivers jump in for session number 2. We add their fastest times together, and that gives us the grid for GT3. We then repeat the process in GT4. But this 43 car grid, Joe, what a sight that will make at the start of tomorrow's race. The biggest grid ever that we have had in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It's going to be quite the spectacle.
Yeah, it's going to be epic, and you can see already just the GT3 element of it, how many cars there are, and they're all jostling for track position at the moment. Obviously this outlap isn't anything competitive, so we're trying to look. What I really enjoy is that the cars are clearing the water by the looks of it, so it doesn't look too wet out there to continue.
No, that's true, but they haven't got a lot of time to get up to speed. It's only a 10-minute session, this, so 9 minutes of that to go. By the time they make their way around at the end of this lap, they're probably only going to get 2 or 3 flying laps in. Bryn Lucas in the pit lane. Bryn, who have you got?
Yeah, thanks very much there, Andy. It's a wet one, as you say, down here. I've got Jem Hepworth here. Now, Jem is racing a racing driver. She's an ambassador as well for Raffa Racing Club. So I thought we'd find out really why she's here and a little bit about the club itself. So first of all, it's great to see you here. What brings you to Silverstone for the 500?
So yeah, I'm here this weekend at a very wet Silverstone. I'm here as a brand ambassador for Raffa Racing Club, as you said, and Motorsport Woman. We're basically here to tell everyone a bit about the Raffa Racing Club, as they've probably not heard about it, and we're coming together as a partnership with the British GT to let people in the UK know, because we've got big plans in the years ahead to bring it out to the UK.
So tell me then, what is the Raffa Racing Club?
So, the Raffa Racing Club is the place to be, I can tell you that. So it's a motorsports community based out in Houston, Texas at the moment. So our HQ is there, we've got simulators there, we've got places you can work there, we've got storage there, you can even service your road cars there. We've got everything that, you know, pro drivers, even people that are interested in motorsport, we've got everything there for them. Amazing simulators, and a gym as well, which is going to be membership based, so you can have a membership and you can use all these facilities. So it's the best place to be.
It sounds like fantastic. Now we've got a red flag you can see at the moment, so we're just, cars have gone off. It's a bit wet, as we say out here, so it's nice to have this chat. So let's just carry on while we're having the chat. We might as well, seeing as they're now having to recover a couple of the cars then. So how did you get involved with the Raffa Racing Club then?
Yeah, so I got involved with the Raffa Racing Club through Motorsport Woman, who I'm an ambassador for as a female driver. They've been working behind the scenes together for about a year now on various projects and just kind of building the Raffa Racing Club up and getting it to the right point to be able to really push it, especially in the UK. And obviously we're based in the UK, so we're kind of the perfect ambassadors for the role. I met them out in Austin last year at the F1 Grand Prix. Just the way I can describe Raffa Racing, I mean, Raffa stands for Racers Family always, and that's the best way to describe them. They make me feel so comfortable. They're all about having fun, and they want to get results as well, which is the best part.
Absolutely. Now we are in the live pit lane, so you can probably pick up on the noise around us, which is amazing. Are we likely to see you and Raffa Racing Club here in the British GT in the future?
Oh, I can tell you that is a big aspiration of mine and Raffa's, and I would love to race with him in the series in years to come. And I mean, we're going to build a clubhouse in the UK in 2024, 2025, so I'm sure it can happen, and we'll be pushing to make it happen. We're actually racing in McLaren Trophy this year, so who knows, if that goes well, we might be here next year.
You never know. Thank you very much, Jem. Back to you, Andy. It is wet, as we say. Cars are going back out on track, hopefully very soon, so over to you.
Indeed so. We've been trying to piece together exactly what's happened here. There were two McLarens off on the exit of the Maggots-Beckett sequence just at the top end of the hangar straight, but whether they got there through spins, mechanical issues, separately or together was not immediately obvious. But Joe, you did sort of predict this: challenging conditions out there, that outlap, cold tyres, low visibility, and no idea where the worst of that standing water will be.
Yeah, exactly, and I called it completely wrong at the start, saying I could see the tyres clearing the water, so I could see the tarmac, but what I hadn't probably allowed for was potentially some standing water, some aquaplaning. And where those two cars have gone off, there is a river that runs across, actually runs across from the access road that runs parallel to the hangar straight and then annoyingly crosses the circuit. So I'd say the Optimum car that we saw at Mark Radcliffe is actually a completely different livery, and that's because the car sustained a big crash in FP2. So luckily Optimum had a spare car, and that car was off. And we also saw the Greystone car of Andrew Gilbert. He looked like, to me, he'd stopped rather than had an off, whereas Radcliffe, I think, had gone off. The car didn't look damaged, but maybe was just stuck on the grass. So I think it's going to be a difficult one for race control now. I think they were correct in sending the cars out. They now need to try and maybe talk to some of the drivers, the more experienced ones, Andrew Howard, Richard Neary, sort of spring to mind, and just ask them, honestly, what are you feeling? But now it's quite a stressful time for the teams. They've got to, one, decide, do they take the tyres off and put them back in the oven, and potentially green flag comes out quickly and they're left on the back foot, because we've basically lost a quarter of that qualifying session with the time remaining, 7.5 minutes. Jules Gounon obviously loving the local weather. So it's going to be a difficult one here for race control. What's the next step, really?
Welcome to the UK, Jules. He's faced a few wet races in the past and has gone well in them, even within British GT. He will be out in the second session in the two-seat Motorsport Mercedes that was one of the absolute stars of the show back at Alton Park. But yes, Joe makes a very valid point. We have now 7 3/4 minutes to go as the green flag does come out very quickly. But they've now got to go through the whole process of getting back out on track, finding some clean air, getting heat in the tyres, and by the time some of those at the back of the queue get back around, they're going to have less than half of the session to go. So they really are up against it. And again, as Joe said, these are the amateur drivers. These are the less experienced drivers. The pros sat keeping as warm and dry as they can in the garage right now. It's the AMs that have to go out there and face these conditions. And, well, let's hope that they don't get caught out by them again, because another stoppage could really start to affect the session.
Yeah, exactly. In this camera we're looking at here, the aquaplaning is happening just to the left-hand side of it. So everyone's had a look at it once, but I mean, in the short time we've had, as we see Andrew Howard in the wall big, and that is exactly that aquaplaning bit I was talking about, and that's going to be a red flag again. And this is really difficult. I feel for everyone involved, the drivers mainly, because I'm a driver, so I'm always on their side, but race control are always under this pressure. You've got to get the cars out there. You've got to drive to the conditions. The problem is aquaplaning. As a driver, you are a passenger. So we're going to get a replay here. You'll look for the standing water just on the apex in 2 seconds. 1, 2, gone. And the rear's lit up, and he's just a passenger. And it's a solid concrete wall with earth behind it, so that does not move at all. So that's a relatively large amount of damage. I don't think we're going to see that car out for qualifying, which is a shame for Andrew Howard, but also Ross Gunn was really up there in FP2 as well, so I think that's going to really hurt their chances. But going back to the aquaplaning, lots of people, you feel it on the road. It's that feeling of loss of control. You essentially have water in between your tyre and the tarmac, so you really get nothing. It's like, you imagine a Twix, you've got the chocolate and the biscuit on the top, the caramels, the water separating any grip being generated, and the only thing you can do as a driver is point the car in a straight line. You can even dip the clutch if you've got a clutch, try and unload some of the drive chain to let the car sit rather than be forced into that water and try and get you out of it. But we've had 2 outlaps effectively. We've now lost 3 minutes and 14 seconds of this session. This is going to be a really hard decision for qualifying to get any meaningful. So as a team, what do you do now? Do you go and wait at the end of the pit lane so you've got track position but cold tyres? Or do you go back to your box and think race control are going to wait 10 minutes? The rain's still coming down. I don't see it improving naturally at the moment.
No, I think the fact that we've had a second red flag in quick succession might sort of make them lean towards the second of those options, that we're not going to restart quickly again. But that decision ultimately lies with race control. But yeah, very bizarre situation where no one has yet set a lap time. We're nearly halfway through the session, and well, they may have to extend it, I guess, if we really got down to the end and no one had been able to put a lap time in. Big shame that for Andrew Howard, though, third in the championship. He and Ross Gunn, after what was a really solid start to their season at Alton Park, got themselves a podium in the first race, backed it up with a top 5 in race number 2, and that means they arrive here at Silverstone with no success penalties to be served in the race. More on that tomorrow. It's a joint championship lead shared by the 2 winning cars from Alton Park. We had 2 60-minute races, the first of them won by James Cottingham and Johnny Adam in their 2Cs Mercedes, and then their teammates Ian Loggins, Jules Gounon victorious in race number 2. Andrew Howard, though, will take no further part in this qualifying session, nor likely will his pro teammate Ross Gunn, because he has been sat watching in the pit lane as this all unfolds. He's now down there to catch up with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, I thought I'd catch up with Ross. So you're watching on, must be a frustrated person at the moment. We're looking outside and this session has not gone to anyone's plan.
Yeah, no, it's been quite a messy start to the day, or start to this session. Unfortunately, Andrew was just a passenger just then. Like, there's a lot of standing water at that corner, and where they turn in, just complete passenger, so nothing he could do. We did try and get the guys to delay the session a little bit because it's just so much standing water on the track. But unfortunately nobody was listening, so a bit disappointing, but the main thing is Andrew's okay, and hopefully we can get the car repaired for tomorrow.
Andrew's a very experienced driver at this level and very experienced inside that car as well. Were you talking to him prior to going out there in the session and telling him what to watch out for, or do you just kind of allow Andrew to get on with it because of the fact he's been here so many times before?
Yeah, well, you know, he's obviously got a lot of experience, but there's obviously this surface is quite new. The Silverstone, it got resurfaced a few years ago, and there's just so many areas where the water is not falling off the track, it's just staying on the surface, and it just makes it really tricky. And we haven't had conditions this wet so far. Of course, it's the same for everybody, but yeah, super disappointing because I didn't think it was necessary for the cars to go out at that point.
But what about tomorrow? The forecast is that it's going to be dry out there tomorrow, so you kind of take all the data from today and almost throw it away and start from scratch. So where do you go from here with regards to this qualifying session for yourself getting out or not getting out?
Well, thankfully we did a test here recently that went pretty well, so we've got that data to kind of fall back on. But the main thing is really just to make sure that the car is, you know, 100%, because it was a concrete wall that he hit, and you know, lots of things can be damaged from that, so hopefully it will be all good for tomorrow.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for chatting to us, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bryn. Ross Gunn, understandably a little bit miffed. Another view of how his car, in the hands of Andrew Howard, well, Howard's car, but the car that Ross Gunn was supposed to be out in later, ended up in the wall, and as Joe was saying, a pretty hefty whack on the front end. Now, this is a lengthier stoppage than the previous one. We are getting some of the cars, 2Cs, for example, here, sending in Loggy back into his pit bay, the car up on the jacks, the wheels off, back in the tyre warmers they will go, and we await news now on a resumption. But it really goes to show there that even the most experienced drivers, Joe, can be caught out by these conditions. It's a surface here at Silverstone that just is not draining the water as quickly as they'd like, and Andrew Howard, who we know is good in the wet as well, even he finding it a bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, Ross Gunn was firing some shots there, wasn't he, at race control, and it's always, when it's your car in the wall, it's frustrating to say the least. The hard bit was Andrew was the first car round, so he's got to check what's going on, and he's the guinea pig for everyone. And so we know he got through the first time, but the other time he obviously just tried it a bit hard. So we've got Cottingham here, we've got Andrew Howard in front, sorry. You can see that rain light potentially disappear more as he goes through the spray. And sorry, he's on the left. Oh, Cottingham having his own moment. So yeah, you can see that whole rear of the car just twitching. And the rear twitches more anyway, just the way the load is. But obviously in a front engine car like the Aston in the wall, and Cottingham's Mercedes there we're on board with, it just is that bit lighter, hasn't got the physics pushing it into the floor. So it is really difficult what could you do as a driver? All you can do is try and be straighter, but that kink onto the straight's impossible to draw a straight line through the river, essentially. So these guys are kind of stuck between a wet and an even wetter place in that regard.
Exactly so. So teams then sat waiting for news, as are we. Gives it a bit more chance, perhaps, to take a look back and reflect on what we saw at Alton Park. What did you make of that season opener, Joe? Because we did see some fantastic racing. We had, again, weather-affected racing for sure, but a great start to the season for 2Cs Motorsport. Were they the favourites for you coming into the season? I know certainly I was expecting them to be quick. We've seen how well they went last year, and I feel like they've taken another step forward this season to become almost the new Barwell, you know, that dominant team, a two-car entry, both of them capable of winning.
Yeah, definitely, and I think they're already quite dominant because they've got the number one on one of their cars.
Exactly.
So as a reigning champion coming to them, that was a really big signing for them to get Loggy. The amateurs we talk about, they're really the anchor to the pairing. The pros are always going to be within a tenth or two, but the AMs can swing a lot more like 1 or 2 seconds. So to be able to get Loggy into your team as 2Cs was really good. And we saw Cottingham get stronger last year as well. So to get Cottingham in alongside Johnny Adam and Jules Gounon alongside Loggy, there's not really a weak link when you try and pick that part. And the Mercedes just seems to be getting stronger and stronger as a car. You never really see it have an off day. Some cars seem to be better when it's hot and dry, some in the wet and the cold, but the Mercedes is always there. Doesn't matter on the track either. So that's really what you need for a championship. Silverstone's probably the track on the calendar that really sticks out. It's so fast, it's so flowing. Yes, we have fast circuits in Brands Hatch, even Alton Park, but they're so much tighter. They're naturally just that bit slower, so the aero's not as important. So we can see the Maggots and Beckett sequence is so wet. There's just, the problem is I think the grass is now sodden. There's nowhere for it to go. So I think we're hearing race controls had to delay this for 15 minutes just to kind of let the weather come through, and then hopefully that water will start to run off somewhere that's not the circuit.
Yeah, such a shame, but I think that is the right call. We could sit here going in and out of red flag periods for the duration of the session and end up with no grid at all for tomorrow's Silverstone 500, so I think this is the right call to be made. Always an interesting weekend for me, this one, Joe, because it is just another race. It's just another round of the championship. It's worth exactly the same amount of points as all of the other 2 or 3 hour races this season, but being the Silverstone 500, that blue ribbon event, is this one of those weekends, do you think, that the teams approach a little bit differently? Get onto that in a moment, actually, because I think Bryn Lucas has found somebody else to have a chat with. Perhaps he can ask that question, indeed, how the drivers feel coming into the Silverstone 500 weekend. Such a great place to come racing, such a huge grid, so many fantastic drivers out there to do battle with them, and Sandy Mitchell is one of them. He's down there now, the only ever double winner of this event, and he's catching up now with Bryn Lucas.
Do you know what, Andy? I was about to come there with that 2-time winner here at the Silverstone 500. I was about to lace it with that beautiful stat, and you've ruined it for me, so thank you very much. Double winner, the only person that's won this twice. And we've been talking a little bit about the conditions. Of course, this has been suspended for a short while. We don't know quite how long that's going to be. Is that the right decision?
I think so, looking at it. I mean, it's just now we have to hope that things get a little bit better. I mean, the sky's brightening up a bit, but the rain's still coming down at the moment. So, yeah, it looks pretty tough out there with the Silverstone surface. The water seems to kind of sit on top quite a lot because it's so smooth. And that's proving difficult in a couple of areas. We've just seen 3 cars go off in the same corner, so clearly there's a lot of standing water there. And yes, definitely causing some issues at the moment.
Now, Sean's sitting in the car, you've been talking to him a fair bit. You've had the honour of winning the Royal Automobile Club trophy. It is a massive honour. You've won it before on a couple of occasions. What would it mean to you to grab it a 3rd time? Do you keep it after 3?
That would be nice. It should be like that. That rule would be nice to be able to keep it, but I doubt I'm going to get to keep it. But no, it's the biggest race of the year for all the British GT guys. You can see it attracts a lot of international drivers and teams as well to come in just for this race, which is fantastic. And the grid's as big as it's ever been. So yeah, to be able to do it this weekend with a grid like this would be even more special. So yeah, we'll definitely be pushing for that.
You talk about how many people have come here. I mean, this is the biggest turnout since 2011 with 43 cars. It was 48 cars back then, but 43 on the grid this time round, and a huge array in GT3 and in GT4, but a great turnout in GT3. How does that change from you when you have the championship and then you've got these other cars around? I know essentially they're invisible when it comes to the points.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange because obviously the trophy is still for first place overall, whether it's a guest entry car or whether it's a championship car. And yeah, we had that scenario 2 years ago, 2021, where a guest car won the overall race, and we finished second. So otherwise, we would have already had the 3 on the bounce. But yeah, it has to change your mentality a little bit, because if you're in a bit of a fight with another car, if you know they're not in the championship, you maybe take it a little bit easier. But equally, if it's over for the overall win, you still want to get your hands on that trophy. So I think that normally goes out the window.
Now, we saw at Alton Park with the 2 one-hour races just how quickly you catch the GT4 cars up. This is a 3-hour race here, so you're going to have to navigate that traffic a fair bit over the 3 hours.
Yeah, it can make a huge difference to your race depending on a bit of luck, but also how aggressive you are through the traffic. Silverstone's a little bit more open than Alton Park, so it definitely helps to be able to get round them. There's a few places you can get round the outside quite easily and things like that, which help a lot. But yeah, we saw it last year, a couple of years ago with Dennis. He got caught up in some GT4 traffic and I was able to make a move around the outside, and yeah, that can be the difference between you winning the race and not. So ultimately you've got to try and do a good job through the traffic and get a little bit of luck when you need it, and yeah, it can really change the race for you.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd bring that up. Look, Sandy, thank you very much and good luck tomorrow as well.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Yeah, Sandy Mitchell then, twice a winner of this event. Now, it's not an easy race to win this either, but Sandy Mitchell, one of those drivers who has really come on leaps and bounds over the years, always has been a quick driver, but is now starting to look like one of the top pro drivers out there on the grid, up against all of these factory backed drivers, works drivers that we've got in the championship. Sandy Mitchell, every bit as quick as them. There is the Beach Dean Aston Martin then, which now we're getting a closer look at it, hopefully, the front of it anyway, Joe. What do we think? I mean, it was a glancing blow with the wall. Yes, it's a concrete wall. It's not very forgiving, but it wasn't just a head-on smack into the wall. Maybe they've got away with largely superficial damage.
Yeah, I mean, best case bodywork, so you can definitely see the splitter and the front bumper are done for. And behind that, the radiator sits very close. So if that's being tweaked and obviously that's got a leak or something, that's the bigger problem in terms of big fix. Because obviously now it's suspended. We've got another 10 minutes until potentially we go out. There's a chance. I mean, the headlights push back quite far, which kind of shows you that impact. Both the wheels look straight at the front. They're not damaged, so the tracking should be okay. The hard bit here is actually the regulation is if you cause the red flag, you're not allowed to resume the session, which would be a nice awkward conversation in race control, wouldn't it? Like, yes, I'm Andrew Howard, I caused the red flag, but did I only cause the red flag because you let me go out on a circuit that potentially wasn't ready for qualifying? So that one is going to be a hard one to go. It didn't look like the team were rushing to get it ready. So, I mean, Andrew Howard was there as well, so he'll be putting his input in as well, I'm sure.
James Cottingham, one of the drivers we mentioned, who was looking rapid a few weeks ago at Alton Park, and he is the latest driver that Bryn Lucas has bumped into on pit lane.
Well, James, we saw you battling with the car on a bit of a replay earlier on and out on track there. Just how treacherous are the conditions? I know you're very experienced in wrestling historics as well, so you know what it's like to race.
Yeah, I think it's just a surprise, you know, the standing water, especially onto the back straight there, which caught Andrew out, the first car out in that second run. It's just the standing water that just can catch you by surprise, so you've got to be really on your toes. But, you know, it's not going to get worse, I don't think. It's just everyone's got to make sure they do a lap.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole thing, 2 laps, in fact, as well, for it to count as well.
Get there,
yeah, and what's it like driving the beast behind, the AMG Merc? Because, you know, you put your foot down and that thing just goes. So presumably if you exit and you land onto the standing water, the back end can throw itself out on you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they've got traction control and ABS, but then it's not that, well, it's not clever enough to get over the standing water. You know, the aquaplaning is just our enemy. They're surprisingly good, obviously, in the wet when there isn't standing water, but that really is what everyone has to watch out for.
Great start to the season for yourself and Johnny, who's a surprise package here this weekend as well for us. So it's great to see him just looking very relaxed at the back of the garage there. For yourselves for this championship run, I mean, you've got to be one of the favourites. There's a really, really strong turnout in GT3 this year with so many people that have got one hand already on the trophy as well, just because of their lineup. But you must be feeling pretty confident with yourself and Johnny there.
I wouldn't say we feel confident, but so far so good. We've just got to keep our heads down, keep out of trouble. As you remember from last year, I only managed 59 seconds of this race. So, you know, to beat a minute is my first hurdle tomorrow. But yeah, look, we're really enjoying it so far. There are some really good combinations on the grid and loads of factory drivers, as you know. I think it's 8. and it's I think it's the best Pro-Am championship in the world. So really excited to be part of it and to so far be at the thick end of it.
Yeah, so it's 9 factory drivers this time round. But look, best of luck out there and stay safe. Cheers, James.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bryn. And James Cottingham was involved in that spectacular accident down at Club Corner in the early stages of last year's Silverstone 500. That's what he's referencing. And we'll be very grateful if he can survive the rest of this qualifying session without suffering a similar fate. We were riding on board with him earlier on in replay, just after Andrew Howard had found his way into the barriers. This was his view coming through that same part of the circuit. It was out of the right, through the left. And there, the wheel spin instantly jumps out of the throttle. Quick hands, quick feet, great reactions actually there from Cottingham, because that car could so easily have swapped around.
Yeah, definitely. You saw everyone in front also having the same issue there. So we've seen 2 McLarens go off, an Aston Martin and a Mercedes struggling, so you can't even pin it on a particular brand struggling there. And I mean, it shows my age, but I raced back here 2011 in what was then called Blancpain, now GT World Challenge Europe, and the Silverstone round we had a wet-free practice, and I was actually in an Aston Martin Vantage V12 back then, and it was this kind of wet, and I remember complaining to the team, I'm really struggling with aquaplaning at that exact point, and they say, okay, we've got an idea, let's go. And it's always interesting to hear an idea from a team, but you're always sometimes a bit scared what the engineers thought up. And anyway, went out, and a lot of the time as a driver you don't get told the change because you get a sort of preconception. But anyway, went out and it was much better, and the short story is basically they put front tyres on the rear of the car because they're narrower, so it helped cut through the water, and that was actually then banned after that from a regulation safety thing, which was a shame, but a cool story anyway, I think.
I wonder how many rules there are that have been written in after Joe Osborne was able to exploit them over the years. Back to Bryn in the pits. Who have you got this time, Bryn?
Sort of a baptism of fire for you, isn't it? You entered into the championship at Alton Park after getting the factory drive. Congratulations on that one as well. I mean, you've kind of set us up for an incredible weekend here at Silverstone. Then the rains happened. What's going through your mind and what's going through Darren's mind sitting in the car right now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a normal summer's day in Northern Ireland, so it's nothing I'm not used to. But yeah, it's tricky conditions. It's horrible out there, I think, with the amount of standing water and spray. So not easy, and obviously early couple of red flags showing that. So I think Darren's cool at the moment, just waiting to see if the session is going to happen again. But yeah, not easy for everyone, and I mean, we're all in the same boat, so I think a boat would be a better option out there at the minute.
It might be, yeah, speedboat would be preferable, of course. Now, when we talk about your AM driver, there's a lot of pressure on you, isn't there, to keep them calm and composed and know what to do out on the track. How hard is it from your point of view? Because the rain came down, it's not you that goes out in the car, first of all, so you can't really get a sense of where the trouble spots are, apart from seeing it on the screen and listening to his feedback.
Yeah, exactly. It's not easy, but obviously that's my role as a professional driver, to try and help Darren as much as possible. And even just now, he came in and asked me maybe what TC settings should he run and ABS and with how much water. And all I can do is give my advice, and hopefully it works for him. And then go out there and try to do my best job as well. So I love it, and I really just hope it goes well.
How hard has it been for you coming into this as the pro driver and having to help an AM set a car up that's best suited for them, but also something that you can get around the track in a pretty rapid time? You did pretty well at Alton Park.
Yeah, we were going well at Alton. It was a shame we didn't get the results I think we maybe deserved or could have had, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And yeah, here this weekend we've also looked quick through the sessions, so hopefully we'll be up at the front again. And like you say, it is tricky getting the car set up for 2 different drivers and 2 different levels of drivers. And I mean, we've been really fortunate to do quite a bit of testing over winter and stuff with Darren. And he's just, every time he's in the car, he's improving massively, which is great to see. And yeah, he's getting more and more towards the car that I also like to drive, which is nice. But obviously it's just finding that best compromise. And at the end of the day, I think there's more time with the AM driver being comfortable than there is me being maybe 1 or 2 tenths faster. So it's getting that compromise right, and that's the challenge.
Certainly nudge him towards your setup. Dan, thank you very much and good luck today and tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Dan Harper in his first season racing in the British GT Championship. Is a former champion in Porto Carrera Cup. He was a front runner in Ginetta Juniors. I'm sure he's faced conditions like these in the past. Now, from that camera shot down at Stowe, it doesn't look too bad. The sky's brightening up a little bit. The track is clearly still very wet, but certainly over at our part of the circuit, Joe Osborne, it doesn't look all that good. You just stuck your head out of the back of the commentary box, withdrew it back inside very quickly, I noticed. No improvement?
Yeah, I'd say for UK rain, it doesn't get much heavier than this. And like I said earlier, it's already on a sodden circuit as we look at the Sky Tempesta car of Kevin Say there. You can see the condensation building up. You need to close that window. It's dripping in, and obviously water coming in then heats up inside that cockpit and then forms into sort of a steam. And it's quite hard to get away. It's probably the best seat in the house there upstairs in the BRDC clubhouse overlooking Brooklands Corner, which is quite a big action spot in weather like this. One, because there's quite a lot of water on the approach down the Wellington Boot Straight in this weather, but the break point is actually quite late because you want to go in deep to that corner and go in really hard and try and get off the racing line. So you will see a lot of cars going off into there just purely because they want to be on the edge of the circuit, so the margin for error becomes that little bit less there. But this is seriously wet. We've been wet all day, but this has gone to another level, it seems, in the last 30 minutes, I think.
And of course, because there are no cars on track, they're not clearing any of that water. It's just building up and simply not going anywhere. There is the number 4 Mercedes then in the pit lane, ready and waiting to go. The two C's AMGs that head the championship table after the 2 races at Alton Park, and no sign of activity there for the time being. Ian Loggins, Jules Gounon victorious in that second race of the weekend. It was James Cottingham and Johnny Adam who won race 1 in what was Johnny Adam's 100th appearance in the British GT Championship. Sometimes these things just work out perfectly, don't they? And Johnny Adam, who was first a race winner in this championship some 12 years ago, looking to try and add to that total again here in the most prestigious race of the season, in a car that we know is good around this track and should be good in these conditions as and when we get running. We're getting another update, by the way, now from Race Control that qualifying has been suspended for at least another 10 minutes, with another update to come at 16:40. So cars now being sent back into the garage. The problem is it's not very windy. We've got the rain, we haven't got the wind to blow it through, so sort of stuck with it for the time being. Hopefully we will get cars out on track in the near future, but it doesn't look great, does it?
No, and we've had this once before in 2012, Snetterton, it rained this hard, and we had to go back to free practice 2 times, as that's the really only meaningful sort of yardstick you've got of people's performance. And again, showing my age, I was back then in a Porsche, actually, a track speed, and luckily I was in 3rd position, so I was relatively happy, and I think a 20-car grid to be 3rd. But one thing is the qualifying order was still quite topsy-turvy, and so that will be quite interesting. So, of course, I don't want to lose qualifying, but I would be quite excited because then we would get a slightly different start order, potentially, which would make it look exciting into race 1 tomorrow, I'm sure. But, yeah, I mean, that rain's falling pretty heavy, and like you alluded to, there's not a lot of wind here, and normally there is because it's an old airfield, so we're on top of a relatively big hill, but also because we're on an airfield, it's flat, there's not that natural drainage. I think that's what we're starting to struggle with here, is the water's got nowhere to go.
And it's that standing water at this part of the circuit that caught out Andrew Howard a little while ago, bringing about our 2nd red flag of the session. He's made it back to the pits now, and he's catching up with Bryn.
It's always nice to talk to you, Andrew, but it's not nice to talk to you in these sort of circumstances with a battered Aston behind us. Talk us through what happened out there, what these conditions are like.
So for me, probably the worst conditions I've ever raced in, and being an old person, I've raced quite a lot. I think the problem you've got is there are certain elements of Silverstone that carry water, carry river across, and and then there's certain elements you're going to get aquaplaning, but it's where you've got aquaplaning where you're not expecting it. And the reality is, listen, the clerk of the course and everybody's got an impossible job. You know, everyone wants to qualify, everyone wants to do well. But I think for me, the first lap out, and I wouldn't call a race, but for me, we probably, hindsight, wonderful thing, easy, we probably should have stopped. You're going to end up with a lot of cars not racing if we continued.
Obviously disappointed, obviously frustrated, and that's understandable as well. Looking at the damage on the car behind him, there's a couple of bent components there that don't look particularly pretty from where I'm standing. Have you got all the parts on the truck to get this back up and running?
Oh yeah, that's not an issue. That's not an issue. When you see the crash I had at Alton 2 years ago, where we literally wrote the car off. These guys will get the car running. That's not the issue. The issue is that running at this level and running where we're running, for me, I don't know. Look, I don't want to say anything wrong. I don't want to say anything. It's racing. We get on with it. But for me, the difficulty of the circuit is beyond the capability of the cars.
Fair enough. They got the car up and running. I suspected that was going to be the answer. Yeah. It's good to see you out here. It's great to see you back in the British GT, and hopefully we'll see you out there racing at the sharp end tomorrow.
Well, we'll be racing. Which end it is, I don't know yet, but we'll be racing. No worries. Okay, cheers.
Thank you very much, Brine. And obviously disgruntled Andrew Howard there, who is unfortunately going to take no further part in the session. But the work going on in the background there was of interest, Joe, because although he can't get back out in the session, they can perhaps send the car out in the second part of qualifying. Now, it won't be able to set a representative lap time as far as putting it on the grid, but they can at least shake the car down, make sure that everything that was bent has now been fixed and it's race ready for tomorrow. They've got a morning warm-up session tomorrow, but Beach Dean are not a team who tend to do many laps in that session, so they'd quite like to get that done today. Yeah,
and there might be other cars that don't set a time in one of the qualifyings, and because it's an average, with it being an endurance race, if anyone else doesn't set a time and Ross Gunn is quicker than that time, that might be enough just to get 3 or 4 places, maybe get in the top 20, and that makes a big difference at the start of the race. Instead of getting stuck behind one of the slower cars, you should be in front, losing 2 or 3 seconds. Suddenly you can get through. We see that course car going round again, and they haven't got another choice. I'm not being critical of that, but in a 4-wheel drive heavy road car Audi, it is very difficult to spot what the racing drivers are complaining about. So of course they need to go and have a look, but what they need to really try and feel is when that front tyre just goes a little bit light, that's going to be 10 times harder in a GT3 or GT4 car.
See what Jules Gounon thinks of all of this, shall we? He's down in the pit lane now with Bryn Lucas.
Well, Andy said welcome to Great Britain to you. I know you've raced in these sort of conditions before, but we've talked about the conditions a lot around the track out there and the fact it holds water. For yourself, looking on with Ian out in the car, the experienced driver that Ian Loggy is, what are you saying to him?
Well, Ian was complaining that it was undrivable and very hard with a lot of standing water, which we all knew, and my best advice was like, it's the same for everyone around you, so just try your best, but I don't know. Let's see, I hope it's going to calm down, so at least we could do a quali. Obviously, yeah, it's the UK. You know, you come. The last time we were testing there, I came and it was sunny, and I was like, oh, it's amazing. And 1 hour later, it was dropping like hell, and it's the same today. But normally, our car is quite good on those conditions, so hopefully, we can do something nice.
Now, my understanding is if you don't do qualifying, it comes down to free practice times, which would put you guys on pole position. So, with that knowledge in mind, do you hope you don't go out again today?
No, because I really like driving in the rain. It's something I really enjoy. So, and I think, you know, in free practice, it's a bit unfair. Nobody knows if you put tires, at what time you put them. So I don't think it's really representative of the grid. And we like to have a fair fight. So I think a quali would be more fair. But I was in Andorra a few days ago with 27 degrees, and I was like, nice, the summer is coming. And then you arrive and you're like, no, actually the summer is definitely not there. But let's see how it goes.
Well, look, it does certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons. It makes it a much trickier race ahead tomorrow if it's going to stay like this. The news is it might turn good tomorrow, which would be a lovely thing. But for yourselves going for the win, the Silverstone 500, it carries a certain amount of kudos, doesn't it? It's the blue ribbon event here. For yourself, you've won many things. Where would you put this if you could win here tomorrow?
Yeah, I would really like to do it. This track, I really enjoy driving it. We did it in the Blancpain GT Series at that time in 17, and it was the highlight, one of the highlights of the season, because a lap on low fuel and quality tires around Silverstone is a unique feeling. So I'm a bit sad today is on the wet, but definitely tomorrow I think it's going to be a game changer because they plan dry running, and obviously we did 0 dry running the whole weekend, so we're going to have to trust what we found on testing, and luckily with Yen invested a lot of time and with the team on testing. We did 4 test days here, so we have a good package to start with. And we will see. It's a long race. We have obviously a 15-second penalty to serve on that last pit stop. That's something new for me because we never tried, so I don't really know how this is going to play out, but we'll try our best, and at the end we are really enjoying, so when you enjoy it should be good.
Absolutely. Well, if you will do so well at Alton Park, it's your own fault. Sure, thank you very much indeed. The rain looks like it's easing off, so hopefully we will get out there later on, but thanks for chatting to us.
Thank you. See you.
Well, I'm now doubly hopeful that the rain eases off, because if it doesn't, and we do have to start looking at free practice 2 lap times to determine the grid for tomorrow's Silverstone 500, it all starts to get very confusing, because it's not actually the individual fastest lap time from that session that would give us the grid, it turns out, because the regulation instead says that it is the combined lap times from that practice session from one driver and then the other driver, so their individual fastest laps each added together, as we would do during the qualifying session. So although the number 1 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes in the hands of Jules Gounon set the fastest time in FP2, wouldn't necessarily be on pole position. I certainly can't sit here and work it all out, Joe, but fingers crossed we get some qualifying in.
Yeah, I was just quickly looking at the timing document that TSL produced, and it shows you each lap time, and I was just quickly looking. So Gounon was fastest on a 2:12, but Ian Loggey, his teammate, was a 2:16. The Nearys, when I quickly look at it, both did low 14s. So combined, they are quicker than that. The interesting bit, and I don't love just talking about how much I enjoy cheating, but the loophole would be those times are registered from a driver ID switch, which the driver manually changes. So it could happen by mistake. I've done it by mistake on purpose a few times when maybe my AM is struggling a bit, and I don't want to show the rest of the world that he's struggling. So I'll flick his driver ID on while I'm driving to make him look a bit faster on those lap times. So suddenly we're getting into a real interesting can of worms potentially of what you can do. So yeah, we've got another 2 minutes until we can see potentially if we can get out there again. But yeah, at the moment, these weather conditions are not getting any better, and the Silverstone curfew is usually 6 p.m, so we've got an hour and 20 minutes. We've still got time on our side, but weather is not.
It is not, unfortunately, although perhaps slightly brightening skies out there. We should wait and see, as Joe says, an update due in the next couple of minutes as to what's going to happen in this qualifying session for round number 3 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. The first 2 races taking place at Alton Park over Easter weekend gave us 2 different race winners and indeed a tie at the top of the championship table. Loggey and Gounon, joint championship leaders with their 2Cs Motorsports teammates James Cottingham and Johnny Adam. Then the Ram Racing Mercedes of John Ferguson and Raffaele Marciello in his first season racing in the British GT Championship. Andrew Howard and Ross Gunn in the barriers in this session. But they are 4th in the points, with Darren Leung and Dan Harper completing the top 5 for Century Motorsport. That is the GT3 championship standings. GT4 has been equally as competitive, and with more news on that, I believe, down in the pit lane is Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, we are looking on at the moment, Andy, because the GT4s haven't been out, of course, and we think, well, will they go out on track? Will they not go out on track? The car's been fixed, though, Matt. Yesterday was a bit of an off, not by you, though. Should first of all say that you didn't bin your own car.
I will say I nearly did on many occasions, but I didn't actually bin it. Yeah, no, that wasn't me. It says Will down it, big way.
What was the off that happened yesterday for us?
Just innocent one, Maggots Beckett's, I think. Just the rear went round, had a little bit of a moment, and just slapped the wall a little bit, but nothing too major.
And those conditions yesterday were much more favourable than what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, they were. There wasn't anywhere near as much standing water, but yeah, I mean, in principle, it's fairly similar. It's just, you know, it's nicer to keep in a straight line down the straight.
That is always the theory, isn't it? Now, you guys looked incredible. Both your cars looked incredible last time out at Alton Park. That brings with it a certain bit of compensation penalty, which comes in the 3rd and final pit stop there. What is the game plan once we get through qualifying for tomorrow?
To be honest, it's a long race, so we just need to keep it clean. That's all that really matters. Obviously, the last stop, we actually don't have a penalty because we won the first race, but the second race we didn't do quite so well, unfortunately, but we're still 1 and 2 in the championship. So I think for us it's going to be a tricky one. I think the BOP, we might be on the back foot in the dry, which maybe it will be dry tomorrow. It would have been nice to get some dry running today, but obviously that is definitely not the case. But yeah, just keep it clean. It's a long year. We're in it to try and win the championship, and that's the only reason why we're here. So at the end of the day, we just need points. Points
always mean prizes, as we know, and it is looking very good for you guys at this early stage. How far can you take it? Is it a case of, look, the trophy could be yours, you're going for the title?
Oh, for sure, yeah. We'll go home otherwise. It's a lot nicer there. No, it's we're very much here for the championship. I mean, me and Will have been in for a shout at winning the championship many times before. This is my first year getting to ride the Mustang, which is just wicked, and so yeah, we're really looking forward to it. It's the last year for this car, then we've got some nice new ones coming for next year, which we're looking forward to at Academy, so that's going to be good. And yeah, to be honest, I mean, I've been out in the car 3 years. So it's just nice to get back in it and try and figure out how it all works again. So this weather actually suits me quite well because I can make up for lack of finesse with a bit of commitment.
Yeah, a bit of a leveller. Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
And Nicoll-Jones then, who along with his teammate Will Moore left Alton Park as championship leaders in GT4. Joint championship leaders, that is, with Ian Goff and Tom Wrigley in their Race Lab McLaren, the new Artura making its racing debut this season. But it was a real up and down weekend within GT4 because both of those cars won a race but then failed to score in the other one. So they have a championship lead, but only by 1 point over Matt Cowley and Eric Evans in the second Academy Mustang and Jack Brown and Charles Clark in their Optimum Motorsport McLaren. Those two tied on points as well. 4 cars covered by 1 point at the top of the tree. Then Aston Miller and Josh Rollidge for the DTO Motorsport squad in their McLaren. The new McLaren Artura is going well in British GT on their debut a few weeks ago. Michael Crease and Thomas Holland in their Raceway Motorsport. Ginetta were up there as well. BMW represented inside the top 10 thanks to Carl Cavers and Lewis Plato for Century Motorsport, whilst Team Parker put their Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 in the hands of Zach Meekin and Dan Vaughan 8th. Then Aston Martin, Josh Miller and Seb Hopkins for R Racing 9th in the points, whilst Michael Johnson and Chris Solkeld for Century Motorsport complete the top 10. And that, Joe Osborne, really is the big takeaway from GT4, as it was last year, really. Every single GT4 car on that grid is capable of winning, is capable of fighting at the front, and ultimately capable of fighting for the championship, just as it should be.
Yeah, I think the added dynamic in GT4 of having silvers is really interesting, that they are a lot more level, so the racing is almost fairer across the board. You don't get that Pro-Am split, so it's definitely a spicy race to watch. We always go on about the GT3s being the fast guys, getting some of the attention, but those GT4 guys have as much fun, if not more, I think. With a slightly less downforce, they can run closer, they don't have so much dirty air.
Well, there is the news that we didn't want. Unfortunately, British GT qualifying has been abandoned. It will not restart. We will have to go off the free practice to combined lap times. Someone far smarter than me has started to do the maths, and we do suspect that this might be good news for the Nearys. Team Abba Racing's number 8 car, Richard and Sam Neary, was, we think, the fastest on combined times. Looks as though the Ram Racing Mercedes is going to be up there as well. In the meantime, though, let's speak to one of the other drivers sharing the GT4 Championship lead, Ian Goff, in the pits now with Bryn.
Yeah, I am indeed. We just got the news through that it's all going to kind of end right now. Where's that leave you, do you know, starting the race tomorrow?
We're not sure exactly, because I don't think not running qualifying was something we'd planned for in FP2. In fact, in FP2, I did a qualifying sim run 10 minutes, and then Tom just went out really just to scrub tyres, didn't even try and set a time. So I don't think it's going to leave us in a great position. Definitely back third of the grid, we think. But I guess we can take some positives out because we have been quick in the wet up until that point. We just didn't show it in FP2, strategically just trying to save tyres for the weekend. So we'll find out. We'll have some work to do. It's a 3-hour race.
Yeah, exactly. You can never really cater for all the conditions, and out here at Silverstone is particularly tough. But going into it, you know, the championship position is really, really good, and also it's a 3-hour race, and there's no, although it's 3 mandatory pit stops, there's no actual pit windows. So strategy will really come into it. So I guess you and the team now have to come and put your heads together and make a genius plan this evening.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the strategy then. I was like, send it on the first lap, but apparently that's not a good strategy for the Silverstone 500, so we'll come up with a better one. But I think, you know, we just got to rely on our performance and the lap times and just, you know, be consistent. We're sort of trying to fight 2 battles at the moment. You know, we're trying to win Pro-Am, but, you know, we're also fantasizing about winning the championship overall because, you know, we're in that position at the moment. So trying to balance our ambition. We've got the 20-second success penalty to serve at the last pit stop. Deduct that from the, you know, the advantage we get by being in Pro-Am. So we're hoping to be in the mix by the time the checker flag falls.
And that advantage is because of the fact of the Silver Cup being the equal extra time on there. So you do get a bit of a bonus, but you do have to make up the time, of course. So yeah. Eyes firmly on the prize tomorrow.
100%, yeah, come talk to me at the end of tomorrow and hopefully we're smiling again. But it'll be dry. Silverstone's always been a good circuit to us. So yeah, we're hopeful for a good result and we don't mind doing a bit of overtaking.
Best of luck.
All right, cheers.
Thank you very much, Bryn. And yeah, that GT4 Championship battle is going to be one that we'll rumble on all season long. Can't wait to see what happens. Well, qualifying then unfortunately abandoned here at Silverstone, and we're hanging on here to try and get some sort of an idea of what the grid is going to look like. There are lots of calculators and abacuses being given a workover at the moment to try and figure things out. It looks as though, certainly based upon those free practice tyres, the Mercedes looking strong, but we're going to get, I think, what we were kind of hoping for, Joe, which is a mixed up grid. Regardless of who's on pole and who isn't, there are going to be people out of position for the start of tomorrow's race. A race in which the teams can really use strategy, actually, to dig themselves out of that hole in a way that they couldn't in a 1 or 2 hour race.
Yeah, definitely. And by my very poor math, which has actually made it even wetter in here for me dribbling, trying to work out, I think it's going to be the Nearys on pole and potentially by 3 other Mercedes. So it looks like it's going to be then Ferguson from Loggy from Cottingham. So it's going to be a strong start of that race. We had those guys all combined together last year on the first lap, and it didn't end well. So I'm already excited for that. I mean, we're quite close to Bletchley Park here, so we need the code breakers and Alan Turing to get on it and give us some answers. But yeah, this is going to be a topsy-turvy grid, no matter whose maths works it out.
Yeah, the British GT script writers working overtime again to put those 3 cars together. Let's chat to the Nearys then and see what they make of it all.
Yeah, the metallic green is shining brightly here at Silverstone. Now, Richard's just said to me he did put in a bit of an epic time in FP2, not because you're expecting this, but just because you were going for it.
Yeah, we were anticipating that the qualifying was going to be in the conditions it's in, and I was just basically trying to get my eye in, so I was on the ball in this session, really.
Fully committed was the words you used to me.
Absolutely.
We expect nothing less from yourself just there. What is it like out there on track? I mean, we've spoken to a lot of drivers about the conditions, but how tough is it at Silverstone when you find these spots of water that maybe you aren't expecting?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to gauge, isn't it? Ultimately, I think if we'd have got 2 or 3 laps in and dispersed some of the water, there would have been something to work with, but unfortunately, we didn't manage to get that.
Now, a lot of the drivers up and down the grid and the teams are putting their heads together, getting the calculators out and trying to work out what happened in FP2 and where that puts them. Do you know where it puts you? Where do you suspect you're going to start tomorrow?
I don't know. It's for Peter to decide.
Right, okay, hands over. Sam, for yourself, I mean, watching on, frustrating for you that you can't get out there and set a time, but is it kind of maybe reassuring that you're not going to have to go out there and risk anything with the car?
No, because I think we both could have got pole in these conditions, so it's a shame that we didn't get out there, but you know, the conditions, obviously, they were pretty wet, maybe 4 or 5 crashes on the out lap. So it's justified to be red flag, and as Rich said, I think if we got a few laps in, we could have maybe carried on in quali, but no, we don't know where we ended up, so I'm sure we'll find out.
We've seen up and down this grid the sheer quality that's come into British GT this year. I mean, it's always had a great standard, but this year Marcello, there's Gounon, there's many others. I mean, Phil King's not even here, but he's kind of on standby, isn't he? So this quality of driver with Johnny Adam up and down, the list goes on and on and on. What's it like for you as the family professional, really, that stepping out into the car with all the weight on your shoulders up against those pros?
I think the easiest part is just to take the weight off and just ignore them. I think I can do the job I do in my car, and that's it. And I think the car will do what it can do, and if I can do the best of it, then the time will come. So I'm sure that's how I look at it, basically. They are big names, obviously, massive respect to all of them, but I just do what I can do and see where we end up.
You've raced against some of them, of course, in other series as well. What was that experience like across on the continent?
Yeah, obviously I've stepped away from the family team a little bit in Europe, racing with Grasser, which has been incredible. We had a really good result at P3 in Monza. So yeah, that's been incredible, but I still love the family racing aspect. You know, a bit of both is nice.
And for yourself, Richard, watching your boy doing so well, it must be quite nice.
Yeah, it's nice. It's an unusual feeling to go to a race circuit and not get in a car and stand there like a spare part all weekend, but that's something I'm going to have to get used to, isn't it?
Look, it's great to see you both, Harry. Thanks very much for chatting. No one wants to make any of these commitments right now. We'll see what happens a little bit later on, but thank you very much to both Richard and Sam.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we weren't getting anything out of them there, were we, as far as qualifying predictions, but there's a good chance that this car will be towards the pointy end of the grid for tomorrow's Silverstone 500. Keep an eye to the British GT social media pages for updates on what the finalised grid may end up looking like, but putting Richard Neary at the front of the grid is going to give us guaranteed fireworks, I think, at the start of tomorrow's race. It's going to be a fascinating third round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. The Silverstone Silverstone 500 blue-ribboned event on the season, one that all of the teams want to win, and it will get underway with the race starting at 12 tomorrow, but make sure you're here before that for all of the build-up to the biggest race of the season here at the home of British motorsport. Qualifying a washout, but tomorrow's race, I'm sure, will keep us entertained throughout. We'll see you then.